My name is Benjamin, and this is my story. Over the next few weeks, I've set myself a goal to build a SaaS.
All we need now is just proving that it works, like a proof of concept.
We could be hit with tens of thousands of dollars in charges.
Holy
What did I do, bro?
$12 for 10 million requests.
Like, you thought there was a lot of work, there's just even more work.
Yep, that's exactly how I was feeling. Whether I win or lose, it's all a part of the journey.
So they probably realized, all right, we messed up, but let's just stick with this, get acquired.
It has just been 1 week and we've made this progress. Yo. I had an alarm on this morning for 9 and I haven't slept with the alarm in forever. I literally cannot remember the last time.
What else is there? So this is on my list so far. I have generating the store script, everything around handling session tracking and events. What we need is just the data structures. And once we have the data structures, we can work with fake data essentially to build all of this.
We're gonna be doing a lot of interesting stuff, and to be quite frank, I don't really know how to solve all the challenges. I set myself a deadline for August 14th, but I'm now realizing that that might be a stretch. And I'm particularly excited for this week because we're gonna be writing the actual session tracking and getting an example up and pulling in a pop-up on the page. I would call this week a success if by the end of it, you can go onto a Shopify store and it loads the pop-up based on the settings from that app. Now I'm just gonna do the rest of my training. Okay, so the designer just sent me a draft of the homepage and I'm about to check it out. I just went through this one and I gave feedback to the designer. And this is a very, very early first draft, like she mentioned. So we shouldn't worry too much about it for now, but I've given them the feedback. It feels really good working with a team where I can rely on them to do part of the job and I do my part of the job, and you know that the job is gonna get done. Now we're loading the script in on the page that we're generating dynamically. If we refresh this page, you will see that it's bringing in the Shopify snippet, and that is actually making a request to our server here, which responds with some data. Of course, would have way more stuff in the script, but this is just to test that it works. And you can see that it adds this config object to the window. And typing window.config, and look at that. We have the data. So with this info, essentially what we can do is make a request to our server and ask, all right, which campaign should we show? This is the user that's on the page, but this snippet is going to be loaded on the e-commerce stores, meaning all of their traffic will be redirected to us, especially during things like Black Friday and these like special dates. We're going to have a spike in traffic that's just going to go crazy. So we have to think about all these edge cases and the recurring traffic that they get normally. So I did a bit of research and figured out that AMP was using or is using CloudFront, and it's this thing right here. And they actually give you 1 terabyte of data for free. But you also get the goods of essentially being distributed across the world, where it's gonna load your script really, really fast depending on where the customer is located. AWS is known for really, really nice free tiers, so we might be able to get around this for free for a while. Which means that there's less costs on us essentially for doing this, but we have to keep in mind that this snippet is gonna be loaded hundreds of thousands of times a day, maybe millions of times a day. And if we don't do this right, we could be hit with tens of thousands of dollars in charges. So the solution we have now by hosting the snippet on our own server is only temporary. Like, I can't rely on that. That means they have to make a request from their location all the way to New York and back, and that might take, a long time. So that's essentially why CDNs are super handy, because they copy your snippet or your code and they put it across the entire world, and that allows them to distribute it really fast. Dude, the thing about AWS is that their free tiers are so incredibly good and competitive that it's like impossible to say no. Like, dude, you get 1 terabyte of data transfer out and 10 million HTTP requests for free. That means essentially if we have 10 million traffic to a site, we get that for free. For an additional 10 million requests per month, you're paying a whopping $12 per month. Insane. Like, how are they even profitable, man? Like, it makes no sense to me, but that's just the HTTP request. And obviously there's the bandwidth and data out and whatever. $12 for 10 million requests. Like, back in the day, you needed to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment to build a brick and mortar store. Nowadays, $40 to pay for servers. Are you kidding me? It is boiling hot in here. I was actually wondering why they track this timestamp. So what I've done in the past is I have a created at attribute in the database. So whenever that row is inserted into the database, it also includes a timestamp of whenever that operation happened. But that's the flaw. Like, what if I'm taking an action right now, but it takes 2 to 3 seconds for that to insert into the database? If you need to rely on data that is very, very accurate, those seconds really matter. But there's pros and cons, because if you do that, people can tamper with
that, and there's no way for you to check if it's in the past. If it's beyond like a day ago, don't process the event. Other than that, it's like there's not that much more you can do about it. I'm so thankful that I've been working on so many different projects because right now it's coming in clutch. All I have to do here is Google Translate the Python code and turn it into JavaScript code. Anyway, today is over, and from my list, there's a few things I had on here that I didn't actually get to accomplish, which is, again, we have to push some stuff till tomorrow, but that's just the nature of coding. Like sometimes you run into hurdles and you don't know how to solve them. Certain problems take longer than a day, so we can't expect everything to be done every single day, but it's important to be ambitious. The list for today was to generate a store script, and we've done that. So for session tracking, I think either Wednesday or Thursday will be good. So we can't really start making that until we know the data structure that we're working with. How are we going to do segments? Are we going to do segments based on pages? Are we going to support custom JavaScript code that they can put onto the page? There's all these questions that we have to figure out before we can really start on that. So like we've made good progress, but we're not quite there.
Oh man. Good morning.
Look at this breakfast, brother. This is what you gotta eat to win. Here's the client-side script alongside a bunch of different tracking. We run that. Are you serious? Why is there an error? Right now, I should have changed the code and it should all work. Let's try to build. Come on, yarn build. Let's see what this does. And yes, that has now generated us this entire file here. Now it's really just about testing it. So let's put it to the test. I've been trying to test this thing for the past 30 minutes, but I can't get it to work. It says that exports is not defined, which I'm looking at this and then, okay, sure. Like it's complaining about exports, but everything else is here and it should be good. Research on Reddit, and it's a problem that a lot of people are having. I'm just gonna be going through some forums and make sure that maybe someone else is, ran into the same problem, and glad to hear I'm not the only one getting confused in this space. The amount of configuration flags is just on another level. There's more people that are struggling with this thing, and it's not just us. I made a few changes to the build, and if we go back to the page, we now actually have some data, and session tracking started. Look at that. I was trying to start the session tracking, but the request is bad, and that's because there's no data being sent up. So I'm gonna have to fix that real quick. Give me 1 second. For blood, sweat, and tears, literal sweat by the way, we got session tracking to work. If I now refresh this page, now it started session tracking and set a VID and SID. Now every 30 minutes, it's gonna set a new session ID, but the VID, the visitor ID, will always be the same. And now we can track whatever you do in that session, and it will extend the session for 30 minutes at a time as long as you're active within a 30-minute window. So I made a request to make a page visited with the URL, and now I got successful events back, which means it was actually parsed. In the database, you can also see that we've tracked it, the visitor ID, session ID, page visited, event data, and when it was created. Now we essentially have event tracking, and that means we can track whatever we want. I'm so excited about this, but I've been meaning to eat food, and I just haven't gotten to it. It's 11 p.m. right now. I think I'm gonna hit the sheets. I am so exhausted. I said I was going to sleep, but I literally have not been able to get my eyes off the code. I was gonna talk about how our goal was to handle session tracking and events, and we actually got it. And look at that little pop-up, dude. 3 seconds, add this pop-up. If we now refresh the page, 1, 2, 3. Yes, finally. I can now sleep in peace, man.
$9:25. Good morning.
Time to hit the gym, then I'll be right back to work.
All right, so I just got an update from the designer. I sent a bunch of inspiration, and now we have something simple like this. Well, I don't know if simple is the right word, minimalistic. I love this. Boost your sales with smart pop-up. We have some like stuff here, joining the crew, whatever, like some simple example. Integrations, nice. We want to show the difference between ours and someone else's without talking shit about them, but we want to show it off. Like with us, look at these amazing pop-ups you can make and look at what people are using that's just not working. This is such a good improvement. Man, it's so sick to see something come to fruition like that, where like you have ideas in your mind and you communicate it to someone and they just like produce a work of art. But yeah, that is so sick having that now. And it's just been 1 week. It has just been 1 week and we've made this progress, and I'm getting done with the script. Not done, but we're making progress. The whole campaign creation, that is like, okay, I'm like holding off on that because I think that's gonna be week 3 and then we're ready to launch. The campaign creator is like the most difficult part, really and truly, because dynamically showing these pop-ups, we have the script to do it, but there's still all of the logic that has to happen where whenever someone lands on this page, we have to figure out who are they and should we show them this variant or that variant or this or that. We're actually showing a pop-up, but there's all the other conditionals that we need to have sorted. I just realized that the snippet that AMP is generating is actually React. And what I've done is build vanilla JavaScript. Essentially, I have to rewrite the entire snippet. Hello, once again, we're here. It's 1 a.m. and I've finally rewritten the entire client to React. There's not going to be that much difference. Pop-up still happens. And if we now click close, I actually track that event of closing it. Visitor, session, and then the event type. That's the ID of the pop-up and the button that we clicked. I've also added extra information such as device type, user agent, view height, view width, etc. Now it's just about figuring out how we want to render and do certain things.
Good morning. Oh man. Wake up and hit the gym.
This is what programming is all about. You sit here for 30 minutes trying to figure out why is my box that's supposed to pop up on the page not showing. Now I have it on my Shopify store just to test. It just wasn't showing. Like, it was technically here on the page, but it just was not showing. All I had to do was add one line of code to fix it. Shopify loads in this base CSS. Deep inside that CSS file, they have this one line of code. They display none if the div is empty. Yeah, sure, technically the div is empty. It's not really empty, but we're using something called a shadow DOM, which is like, it's hidden away from the page essentially, but that's the purpose of that sort of functionality. So that the styles that we put inside of it doesn't leak out to the rest of the page and the styles from outside doesn't leak in. All right, so it is 1 a.m. I am currently looking at the configuration object from AMP, essentially to understand how they do all of their campaigns with segmentations and variations. And I'm gonna have to make, rule sets and events, and there's so many edge cases to think about. What if you're running multiple campaigns at once? How do you determine which one has the priority? And how do you retrieve all the data from the user to know exactly which URLs they've been to? Or if the user has been on the page for 20 seconds, how do you determine that? What happens if they reload? We're making progress. And by the way, I want to show you something. Here's my Shopify store. In a few seconds, it should pop up with something. Yes, look at that. And you can close it, by the way, up here. Now it closed it and it tracked the fact that you closed it. And you can see that it changes based on the size. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to show the user 2 different screens. So they're going to design for mobile first, but they will also change certain things on how it would look on desktop. So maybe titles are bigger, or maybe images are bigger on desktop, but on mobile they're going to be smaller. All right, so I'm gonna wait till next week. I'm gonna do the rest of the campaign because, dude, I'm going absolutely crazy. The level of recursiveness, depth of the data in order to run these campaigns, I'm starting to question whether just straight up copying what they have is the right move. I've been spending so much time making these schemas. There's so much recursiveness, and sometimes they use the word conjunction, and another time they use the word periodic, and it's just like, why are you mixing two things? That I honestly just think they made a lot of mistakes in the beginning and they stuck with it. It's easier to stick with something once you've started using it and you have customers that are using it. You're gonna have to do migrations and whatever, and so they probably realize, all right, we messed up, but let's just stick with this and then get acquired. I'm gonna have to really sit down and draw everything out. I think we've made good progress this week. We have something that works and that does session tracking, and all we need now is really just building out the campaign creator. The campaign creator on one side is all of these segments of the users and determining when you want to show these pop-ups, and inside of the pop-ups you can have variants of pop-ups, and then variants can have their own rules. So that's where the complexity gets kind of challenging, and I'm gonna have to really truly sit down with headphones on and map it all out.